Are you ready to take your ministry in a new direction? Are you ready to explore new innovative ways to carry the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world? Have you ever thought about having a television ministry? Were you reluctant because of pricing? Did it seem too costly for your ministry? If I told you that television is affordable, and that there is a solution within your budget, would you be interested? There is an affordable solution for your ministry. It's Clarity IBN. Clarity is an affordable option for you to be on television. You can reach the world for Jesus, without breaking your budget. Go now. Go to clarityibn.org. Fill out the contact form, and a representative from Clarity IBN will email you on how you can be on television, affordably. Don't wait, don't procrastinate. Do it now. Go to clarityibn.org and get started.
Good morning to everyone. We are getting started with our Sunday school lesson this morning. This is April 24th, 2022. Welcome to the News Church, and we are here this morning for our Sunday school. And we're going to have this is fourth Sunday, so yeah, we've been doing a presentation since February regarding our history before slavery in America. So thank you for joining us this morning. And we're going to talk today a couple of different topics. But let's have a word of prayer first. Father, thank you for blessing us this morning, for your goodness, your kindness, and your mercy. Thank you for your bountiful many blessings. We pray now, God, that you would bless us in this time that we have come to share. Allow our hearts and minds to become good ground. We will receive thy word, and then bring forth good fruit unto good measure. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, those of you that are listening online, welcome again. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. One, I want to talk about, because of the fact that when we talk about history before slavery, let's deal with one important fact regarding what we call the United States of America and this land mass. Prior to slavery or even the Europeans coming over here, there were approximately 60 million Native Americans or indigenous Indians in 1492 when Columbus supposedly discovered the place where the people already were. How about if I come to your house and discover it? Already there. Yeah. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to discover Bishop's car today. Take it with me up to the lake. I'm going to discover his car. How about that? He discovered a place that people were already there. Yeah, like, okay, what did you discover it? Oh, it was already here. You know, come on now. I heard something the other day. Now, it just totally blew me away. There are people who actually believe that Jesus was a woman, yeah, and that Eve created Adam. I'm telling you, this is. See, you understand. We live in a society that is starting to go plumb cuckoo. That's in my opinion. Anyway, plumb cuckoo. Everywhere it says he, but they saying it was she. God, he, and they're saying, well, God is a woman. Well, you know, we got all kind of crazy stuff. But this in particular, if you went from 1492 having 60 million Native Americans to now there are 5.2 million American Indians and Alaska Natives in the U.S. population, which makes up only 2%. So what does that tell me? That tells me that 98% of the people who occupy this land are not natives. In other words, America is a bunch of foreigners.
They won't let you read that, though.
Huh?
They won't let you read that.
Of course not. Yeah, but America is a bunch of foreigners. Now, isn't that crazy? How is it that they can even think to pull this one off? That that America, or well, let's say this. Only way I know it, how to say it. White folks think they American. And only them. And that they are the only true citizens of this country.
But they call themselves European.
Yes.
They call their race European.
They're all of European descent. All of them are European descent.
And they say that.
Yeah, and they'll tell you that. And the rest of us are hodgepodge of everywhere. But mostly African. So if only 5 million of the original 60 million is left, that means over the years they decimated over 65 million Native Americans. Their populations are not growing. Something is seriously wrong with that. And believe it or not, there are a lot of the slaves who were inbred with the Indians, so there are some of us who also have Indian blood in us. Indian and African blood. Yes. Everything has a motive. Everything they do has an agenda. Matter of fact, the Bible tells us that everything there's a time, season, and a purpose to everything under the sun. They don't think that they're not doing this on purpose. There is an agenda. And when you have this, now, and for the people to have the mindset they have regarding just being an American citizen, and when they tell you, go back home, well, where are you going? If we told you, y'all to go back home, where y'all going? Because 98% of the people of the population of these United States of America are foreigners. There are only 5.2 million original Native Americans still alive today. That also, and because we are connected to them, that's included in our history before slavery. See, God didn't make any mistakes, and he knew what he was doing. And the fact that all of this is taking place now, and they are very slow to admit, they're very slow to admit what they have done. That's the saddest part. And they have been, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been in denial. That's the word. They have been in denial of this for years. Now, here's another. Some facts about slavery in America. Did you all know that the group that was brought here was in 1619 was actually from the group that was selling slaves to the Portuguese and Europeans, the Ndongos. And they had a queen. And what was her name? I had it at the home. They had a queen who was part of that. Here we go. Her name was Nzinga. Queen Nzinga she was selling Africans, and she died in 1663. She was murdered by a predecessor who took over because he didn't believe the woman should be in charge. And then he killed her and her son. Why her son? Because her son was the heir to the throne. She killed the connection to the bloodline. So she had one son, and her husband died in a battle. And so her son would have been the heir. And she only carried on. See, she would have carried on until he come of age. And because this other guy overthrew the government and became king, once he became king, he killed her and her son. And I think her mother too. Oh yeah. Oh, they were treacherous. Exactly. Kill the bloodline, and they take over. Now, yeah. Let me see. I'm trying to get his name. I just had pulled that up. But anyway, yeah, her mother was killed, her son was killed, and she was killed. But after that, they still became, were part of the slave trade. But they themselves, that first group that we talked about that were brought to Virginia to Jamestown, they were in Dongo. Those who were selling the slavery in the bees. Now, they captured them in Africa, and then what they did was they would transport them to South America and what we now know as the Caribbean. So there's a lot of Caribbeans. Yeah. Now I got a question. Who was the first country to abolish slavery? Yeah, that's an interesting question. Who abolished slavery first? No, what country? What country abolished slavery first? It's gonna shock y'all. Now, Bishop gave us a challenge. We talked about Black history. Beginning of the year, what was the challenge? Discover something you didn't know. Okay. All right. This is gonna blow y'all away. I'm telling y'all. It's gonna blow you away. The first country to abolish slavery, not only at one time was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. They were in the top 3. They were actually one time the wealthiest, but made 2 others wealthy. And now they are the poorest nation on the planet. There you go. Say it again. Say it again. You get an A. Say it again. Haiti was the first country to abolish slavery. And when did they do it? When did they do it? How soon after becoming a nation officially did they abolish slavery? No, I said how soon after they were established as a country did they abolish it? As an independent nation. On the day they got their independence, the first thing they did was abolish slavery. They didn't waste any time. See, listen to this fact. Global protests in support of Black Lives Matter have systematically exposed the legacies of slavery and colonialism today. This is an article from the Washington Post. This has put many on the defensive. White people are quick to tout stories of abolition, emphasizing the path bravely forged by imperial powers like Britain and France. They diminish the realities and consequences of slavery and colonialism by demanding gratitude for ending the same violent systems they had previously implemented. They claim that they're the ones that cleaned it up, but they're the ones that actually started. They weren't the ones that started cleaning it up. And here's the rest of the story. These narratives are historically inaccurate. Y'all heard the story about history is controlled by the people in power because they're the ones who write the narrative. They're the ones who write the narrative, so they control what's written in history. Well, the narratives are historically inaccurate. Neither the French nor the British were the first to abolish slavery. That honor instead goes to Haiti, the first nation to permanently ban slavery and the slave trade from the first day of its existence. In other words, that foolishness is over as of today. Now, the bold act of the Haitians to overthrow slavery and colonialism reverberated around the world, forcing slave-holding nations like Britain and France, who claimed they were the ones that abolished it, to can't come face to face with the contradictions of their own enlightenment, when many would now like to forget this record. Now, here's what happened. In 1697, Haiti was a French colony with the name Saint Dominique. By the second half of the 18th century, it was the most, now listen to this, it was the most wealth-producing colony in the world. Does this seem to follow a pattern? What was the next greatest wealth-producing area that the Europeans exploited? I'll give you a hint. Mandela became the president. South Africa. And they became the most wealth-producing nation because they were exporting what? Diamonds, gold, oil. They were pilfering the South African nation and using the native residents as slave labor. Listen to this sad story. It was the most wealth-producing colony in the world, exporting sugar, coffee, and indigo to France. Who knows what indigo is? It's a color, but so it's a plant that produces the ink. Everybody used for what? For writing. And the plant was plenteous in Haiti. That's where they got it from. Indigo. Is any of that interesting to y'all? Indigo, yeah. And now, let me tell you what it was. It's a tropical plant of the pea family, and it was formerly widely cultivated as a source of dark blue dye. It was obtained from the indigo plant. It's the color between blue and violet in the color spectrum. Indigo is a very pretty color. As a matter of fact, one of the prettiest things to see is a body of water in the color of indigo. That is the prettiest thing you want to see. It's between purple and blue. Indigo, yeah. It's in the color spectrum, and it lands right there in between blue and purple. Real pretty color, and it's rich. Matter of fact, and if you use it a lot of times and make it a transparent color, the stuff that you can see behind it or that it really makes it stand out. It's not a real bold, like nice bold color. But it came from Haiti. Enslaved men, women, and children produced this wealth. Now, how do you produce all this wealth but everybody getting rich with you. See, this is the part that really, kind of blows all of their claims about how great they were, how godly they were, and how much, they loved God and worshiped God and honored God, but they were exploiting all these other people's natural resources and valuable stuff, and the people who are producing it are the poorest people on the planet. At one time, before they took over their country, South Africans were what? Just like Haiti, poor folks. And what happened when they flipped the script and all those white folks had to start running for their lives? Who rich now in South Africa? The South Africans. The real South Africans. Now, what if the Indians decided in time for them to cash in their check that IOU? And as much as they keep telling us, and there's next one Sunday, I'm going to tell y'all about the rabbi who are going around now telling folks that the real original Jews are the black people in America. Rabbis are teaching it, Jewish rabbis. And they got proof. They've always had it. They just never told us. So you got my goods. So since you done just come, he's like, okay, I discovered this card, I took off with it. You got a right to come and find me and what? Give the card back. Because I didn't discover anything. I did what? Stole it. I did what? Stole it. I stole it. So did they discover America? What did they do? They stole it. Now, enslaved men, women, and children produced this wealth under an incredibly violent system of slavery. Now listen to this part. It was regulated and legitimated under Louis XIV's Code Noir. The death rate among the enslaved was so high that the French constantly imported new captives to work the plantations. Does it sound like something else? Why did they have to keep importing so many slaves here? So the first groups they were bringing in, they was hard on them. They was killing them. They were killing more than half of them on the trip across the Atlantic. And then those that got here, but barely half of them survived after getting here. If they didn't get sick and die, they worked them to death, so they kept what? Bringing more in. More younger. At any one time, about 2/3 of the enslaved population of Haiti had been born in what country were they born in? Africa. They were imported. So they couldn't have been born in Haiti. If 2/3 of them, if they were being imported constantly, 2/3 of them, they couldn't have been born there, they were being imported in. They were from Africa, the continent of Africa. And most of them came from Central and Western Africa, that region I showed you called Negro Land, which is now modern day Angola, Congo, Libya, Liberia, Ethiopia, all that. All that area, that central and western part, Gold Coast, the Slave Coast, the Sand Coast, that's where they come from. Matter of fact, they would take sometimes 2 months to march them down to the coast to get on the ship. And they would have doctors there examining them to determine if they were healthy enough to make the journey, because they knew they were going to have them confined in the hull of the ship, only going to feed them once every 24 hours, and they couldn't come up, and they didn't have bathroom facilities, and couldn't wash, and have no hygiene like the crew members. They kept them down under there, and when they would die, they would leave them down there till they landed, because if they went down there, they would either get sick or die just from the stench. So they couldn't even get the dead bodies out. But we had to survive smelling them dead bodies all the way on the journey. We had to be tough. And y'all talk about tough times now.
I thought they threw the dead ones over.
No, when they first tried to do that, it would actually harm the shipmates, and so they stopped doing it. They wait till they get to port, and they get the ones alive off when they clean the ship, because they would sail up first to a European port, then they would, clean the ship, they get the dead ones out, throw them overboard, and then they keep on around. And when they were dumping the bodies, though, and this is why a lot of people surmise the fact that the sharks followed the route, because when they were throwing the dead bodies off, those that did, that's the same route hurricanes take every year. Man, so that sounds like payback to me. That sounds like payback to me, Bishop. What they call it? Karma? What goes around, come around? Or the Bible says, what you sow, you reap. In 1791, enslaved people on the northern sugar plains of St. Dominique rose up in a coordinated rebellion to destroy French slavery. This started the 13-year event that has come to be known as the Haitian Revolution. In 1793, now you find out the year it happened, David, the rebels freed themselves by forcing the colonial commissioners to abolish slavery throughout the colony. They got their independence in 1793, and on the first day, declared slavery abolished throughout the colony. The colony then sent a delegation to the French National Assembly to convince the French government to abolish slavery in the entire empire. See, they were connected to the European Empire, the British and French, who were in control. Once they took over, they sent a delegation and say, listen, we demand y'all stop this throughout the entire, here was it, they sent them there to convince the French government to abolish slavery in the entire colony. This is what happened. The National Convention declares that Negro slavery in all of the colonies is abolished. In consequence, it decrees that all men, without distinction of color, living in the colonies are French citizens and will enjoy the rights guaranteed by the Constitution the Assembly wrote. Now, this is how they say we abolished slavery. But they didn't. They forced it. Now, part of it is what? Where was their wealth coming from? From Haiti, who had taken over their country and taken their land back. The Haitians, who had a thumb on them or a foot on their neck saying, you're going to abolish it because you're getting all your goods from us. But the only part about that they didn't do, they didn't secure their bag like they should have. But if they secured the bag, see, South Africa learned. When South Africa kicked them out, when they overthrew the white government in South Africa, they secured their bag. They said, not only are you going to get out of here, we canceling all your bank accounts, all your holdings, all your stocks and bonds. Everything you got is gone because you stole it from us. It's ours. You better find a way to get out of town if you don't.
For the time that they was in their country. You still own French a lot, but French claim you still own a lot of money.
And that was the issue. They didn't secure the bag because they let France convince them they owed France all this money. What I owe you for stealing from me? Wait. Let me get this right. Okay, I'm gonna come to your house. You got $1 million stashed at your house. I'm gonna come take over your house, make you work for me, go out and make me another $10 million. Then you're going to finally rebel and tell me I got to go. I'm going to take the 11 million I got when I come there, 10 million I had you make. I'm going to leave and I'm going to convince you that you got to pay me another 30 million over the next 30 years. What sense that mean? Huh? Oh, no, you're going to owe me. No, you owe me. Because I'm the government. I'm the government. I didn't establish that. but wait, no. Tell them again, Bishop.
They fought a war against you. They kicked him out. So when they kicked him out, they left and said, okay, you leave because you said, oh, all this money. And we're going to give you so many years to pay it back.
Yep.
But until you do, you're going to compensate. So you think you're not going to pay for things that you take from your country.
Now, listen to what they did. This was France's first abolition of slavery. First, that means they had to do it again. A concession offered to retain the valuable colony. We're gonna let y'all have it. You're gonna have your freedom, but we're gonna retain control over the colony, and you owe us taxes. Because we're the government. We're gonna charge you to do right by you. Well, in the way that they presented it, they thought they were getting the deal. They didn't really understand. You see, what's the first thing? How do you overcome a people? You make them ignorant. Ignorant doesn't mean stupid. What is the root word of ignorant? No, what is the root word? Okay, A-N-T is the suffix that means to be in the state of. What is the beginning of the word? Ignorant. What's the beginning of the word? Ignore. Basic English. I'm messing. Ignore. Oh, y'all, I missed that. To be in the state of ignoring. And when you ignore, what does ignore mean? To not pay attention to what's right in front of you. They weren't dumb. They weren't paying attention. Because if you'd read the fine print, what do you mean? You're going to maintain control of the wealth. No. If we free in this our land, no. I tell you what, we going to pick the stuff and you going to pay us. But we'll export it to you for a price. And after the way y'all been treating us the last 100-something years, you got to pay up front. Huh? That makes sense? Yeah, let me show me the money. No, I don't want no I owe you, because you already owe me. That's the problem. You in debt. I'm not in debt to you for freeing me. You in debt to me for enslaving me all those years. You owe me. And that's what they did to us too. They ain't paid us yet. 40. And right now, the cost, listen, the value of 40 acres and a mule then has exponentially increased to now. You'll never get back. Give me us 40 acres and all the mules. In 17, look, he says, this was France's first abolition of slavery, a concession offered to retain the valuable economy within the empire. In other words, you still belong to us, though. He said, but it wouldn't last. In 1799, now remember, this is 6 years later, because this happened in 1793. In 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte established himself as first consul of France and became determined to reign in the growing autonomy of Saint Dominique under the revolutionary leader and colonial governor Toussaint L'Ouverture. Y'all heard of him, very famous. He published the 1801 colonial constitution that forever abolished slavery. Now, Bonaparte actually sent an army, and they sent the army to restore the colony that was then still Saint Dominique. Then his brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc, that's why most Haitians have French names. Did y'all know that? Most Haitians have French. Okay. What names do most black people have? You think they're not African names. We got European names. Yeah, we listen. What no Jacksons in Africa? No Johnsons, no Petersons, and definitely no Elsies. And I guarantee you wasn't no Davis. So they did what? They got their names. The Haitians have French names. Y'all don't know they're my cousins. They all come from Africa, from the same place we come from. They have French. How does all these Africans who are spread out all over the world? Okay, South Americans, they have Spanish names. Puerto Ricans have Spanish that go to the Caribbean. Okay. I know y'all. Whoever was in charge, them the names you got. And this is why many of us don't even know what our real last name is. I bet you wasn't no Millicans in Africa. Yes. See, and an Irish last name. You all of the above. See, Spanish, Creole, and Irish. But she black as she can be. Yeah, and some Indian. But these are kinds of things. Now, that is what really is being in the state of ignorance. Because we're ignoring some real, they make them subtle facts, but if we really examine them, those facts are speaking out loud. They're speaking out loud. When God told Israel, if you don't act right, I'm going to send you back to Egypt on ships. And told them what was going to happen, where they were going to go. And Egypt was a metaphor. It wasn't a physical place. It's the place of misery and bondage. And you weren't going to be able to buy your freedom. And so, and where did we get scattered? To the Caribbean, to Europe, Haiti, all those islands, South America, North America, and the Hawaiian Islands. All in places, that's where we ended up. From all the same location. Okay? But we all got different last names. How we get Polynesian last names? Whoever your master was. There you go. And so the war was called the War of Extermination. And the war was to deport L'Ouverture. And that was the brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc. And there's some Leclercs in Haiti right now. I got a daughter married once. That's her last name. Here's my opinion, he says, on this country. Leclerc wrote in a letter to Bonaparte on October 7, 1802. We must destroy all of the black people in the mountains. men and women, and spare only children under 12 years of age. We must destroy half of those in the plains and must not leave a single person of color in the colony who has worn an epaulet. Now, let me just pull that up, tell y'all what an epaulet is. It is an ornamental shoulder piece on their uniforms that they wore to identify they were part of the Haitian army. So anyone who ever, and anyone old enough to hold a gun, age 12 and up, were part of their army. That's why they say we got to kill everything over the age of 12 and anything that has worn an epaulet. And so the first French abolition ended quickly. Bonaparte's return to colonial order included slavery, and in 1802, he reinstated slavery in France's other Caribbean colonies. See, how our people coming in bad. Now, that was another part. They take a group of them folks and come in with guns, and they would take over the entire population of people. They had more people, but they had a fire population. And plus the fact, even if they said, well, listen, if we bum rush them, few of us gonna get killed, but we're gonna survive. And everybody will say, yeah, who wanna die first? Kind of, catch 22. Self-preservation. Wow. Then on January 1, 1804, there was a year later, the slogan was called Freedom or Death. Somebody finally got the idea of what I just said. Jean-Jacques Dessalines led the Revolutionary Army to victory on January 1, 1804. That was the total of the 13 years. 1791 to 1804 is the 13-year war. They had it abolished. Then the French reneged. Then they won again on January 1. And Dessalines declared the Haitian independence, promising Haitians would never and forever ensure the empire of liberty in the country that gave them birth. He said, we must cease from the inhuman government that has for a long time kept us in the most humiliating torpor. All hope of re-enslaving us, we must then live independent or die. That's fine when he says enough is enough. Yeah. As Popeye says, that's all I can stand. I can't stand no more. To die is more acceptable than to live like this. Now let me turn that around. Some folks got to take that attitude about salvation. To die to Christ is more acceptable than to live like this for the devil. He says to them, we must live independent or die. So from the first day of his existence, Haiti banned slavery. It is the first country to do so. And the next year, it published its first constitution. And here is Article 2 of the Constitution. It stated, slavery is abolished forever. That's Article 2. Slavery is forever abolished. That's Article 2. We don't need to give no more explanation. We don't have to elaborate on it. So they banned slavery, and they banned it in its entirety. They also abolished the slave trade. Unlike the two-step approach of the European nations and the United States, they act like they had abolished it, but remember when I gave the report on this first ship and the first two that landed in Virginia, they were actually carrying those slaves illegally because Europe had so-called banned the transportation and sale of slaves but they bought them and they sold them from 2 ships under European ownership. And they had a license from what was the French and the Dutch until somebody got in trouble. And the reason the second ship dropped off, the 4 or 5 it had left, or 7, and took off because they supposedly coming to arrest them. How you gonna come to arrest them though? But somebody gave me heads up. They about to get arrested. Drop them in hightail out, and we're gonna give you some supplies to go on your way. And now, isn't there something wrong with that picture? Now that's some ignorance there. An initiation of revolutionaries in Saint Domingue, France, had abolished slavery, but it swiftly reinstituted and restarted the slave trade in 1802. Now, they stopped it in Haiti, but restarted the slave trade the same year. In 1802, 1804, Haiti gets its total independence. Now watch this. The British, many of whom tout their leading role in abolition. I gotta read that again. The British, many of whom tout their leading role. What leading role? In abolition, abolished the slave trade in 1807, but only passed the Abolition Act in 1833. Wait. And the story ain't over. And continued enslaving people in the Caribbean until 1838. And even then, the Abolition Act was similarly spurred on by a major rebellion in Jamaica in 1831, 1832. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Simply put it this way. They lied. They lied. Discover some stuff you didn't know. Did you know? Now, here's something though we still know. They lied then, they still lied now. Lied then, they still lied now. And here is the fact. The fact is, who you gonna believe? Well, whose report will you believe? Simple fact is, we have to really understand it is the grace of God that has blessed us to even have what we have. Because if they had it their way, we would still be oppressed, suppressed, depressed, and distressed. But thanks be to God, who loved us enough to look out for us, has kept us, and has kept us free. And I think we ought to give God some praise and glory for what he's done for us. Because if it wasn't for God, we'd still be fighting. God loves you and I love you. Not a thing we can do about it. All right, Bishop.
So it has no internet, so I can log into the internet, but you could wait till you log into that and walk up. Thinking it was ready. It's like a lot of us just think things are right.
It ain't right.
Get it right.
It ain't right.
Yeah, but you're trying to get it right. And we run off before we get it right.
Mm-hmm.
So we back to still trying to play with the figure think it's going to come on. Eventually you're going to realize it's not going to come on.
It ain't coming on.
But separate out for things we didn't know. You know what? We never talked about Hitler, Rome.
Oh, yeah.
Rome had a big factor in those things also. And Rome was supposed to be the place of religion. The religion was supposed to be the first class. Rome, Italy, the country, Italy itself had a lot to do with the things that were going on in that time. Because the church was dictated not only to Italy, but to France and to England it's also dictated what goes on. So the church in Rome dictated what was on in the And they're still doing it today. So, you know, the Vatican is considered its own country.
Yep.
So we have to look at what's going on. But you know, one thing about this stuff is that you look at France and the connection France has with the United States. But do you know in World War I, who helped the French government with black power? These men were allowed to fight with the United States. And definitely what they were too ignorant to fly planes because the United States. But France, knowing it's also the Haitian War, it's also what they did to France, what the black people did to France in that Haitian War, they learned that black people are smart.
Yeah. Better get them. They'll help us.
We need to get somebody that can help us. So what they did is they went and they recruited black people from the United States to come to France and help them fight the war. And you know, France, out of all the European countries that were overtaken by Germany, France wasn't.
No. Because of the black soldier.
It's also the black people that were fighting with them. So we have a history.
And then America jumped in to try to take credit that it was them.
That's it. But they still thought we was too stupid to pick up a gun.
Yeah.
Until they started bringing all these white boys home in bags. Yeah. So then they start switching the script. They start setting us out front. When you came to find out they wasn't, many of us weren't coming back in bags.
And what is the only airborne squadron to never lose a bomber escort in the history of air warfare? The Tuskegee Airmen, who were all black pilots.
So we have a history that goes back, but we have a tendency of only going back so far. And when we talk about the airmen and what they went through the history, but there was airmen
before them. Yeah.
And then the accomplishments of those black men before them, we never talk about.
Never. Because they don't tell you.
Because they don't want us to know what these black men did over in France. That allowed them to make them start thinking twice by opening a school for black airmen air pilots in this country. It was because of those men in France that made them do it in the United States.
Yep.
But they only would take this and put it on the president at the time, and his wife said that they were the reason. And that wasn't the reason.
They sure was.
But they don't want us to know.
Yep.
So it's good to talk about this. I've been involved in this one.
Uh-oh.
Told my eye. I think it on time. It's just that I'm gonna mix my eye. But I think that we're going to conclude our Sunday school at 11 o'clock. And we would pick it up, we would pick it 5 minutes, pick up our morning service. Father, in Jesus' name, thank you all for these words of enforcement. Thank you for opening our eyes to our Father, that we see that your word is going forth, Father. Thank you for all the things that were said and done this morning, Father. Bless the Sunday school. Bless each and every one that had ears to hear. Father, bless us go forth. Bless those who may watch later. Give them ears to hear and the understanding heart and keep it together. This day forward, bless the offering, let it be used to glorify and keep doing it. Keep it together. This morning, Jesus' name. Amen.
And we'll be back 11:15 for our morning worship on air.